The apartment had reached a level of chaos that could no longer be blamed on creative engineering habits. Tools lay mixed with laundry, half-built devices blinked quietly in corners, and a lonely silence filled the air like dust that never settled. The kind of silence that wasn't loud but heavy, pressing against walls and thoughts. He had long ago stopped inviting people over, not because he disliked company, but because company never seemed to stay long enough to matter. That afternoon, while stepping outside to throw away a bag of trash that had been waiting far too long, he noticed someone sitting near the building entrance. At first glance, she looked like a stranger who didn't quite belong to the city. Her clothes were oddly mismatched, her posture too straight for someone tired, and her eyes, they didn't move the way human eyes usually did. They studied everything with a calm intensity, as if the world were a puzzle she had just started solving. When their eyes met, she didn't look away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, like she was recalculating something invisible. "You appear burdened by excessive material disorder," she said. He blinked. What? Your carried objects show signs of prolonged neglect," she continued, pointing precisely at the trash bag. He stared at her for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or walk away. "Yeah. Something like that." She stood up smoothly, brushing imaginary dust from her clothes. Up close, she seemed even stranger. Her accent wasn't from any place he could recognize. Her words were technically correct but arranged in ways no one spoke naturally. "Are you without habitation?" he asked awkwardly, half joking. She considered the question as if it were a mathematical equation. "I am between galaxies," she replied. He almost dropped the trash bag. He assumed it was either a joke, a metaphor, or the kind of poetic answer people gave when they didn't want to explain their situation. Either way, something about her seriousness made it impossible to dismiss her entirely. "You hungry?" he asked. "I do not require sustenance at this moment," she answered, then paused. "However, I am open to transactional agreements." That was when the idea slipped out of his mouth without much thought. "Look, if you want, I could pay you to clean my apartment." Her eyes lit up, not with excitement, but with focus. "Define parameters," she said immediately. He hesitated. You know. Just clean it. Make it look normal." She nodded once, firmly. "Accepted." He expected her to change her mind halfway up the stairs, or to reveal she was joking, or to disappear entirely. None of that happened. Inside the apartment, she stopped just inside the doorway and scanned everything slowly, like a commander assessing a battlefield. He felt embarrassed suddenly, noticing details he had long learned to ignore: stains on the table, cables tangled like vines, dishes stacked in a way that suggested archaeological layers. "Commencing operation," she said softly. He sat on the couch, half amused, half confused, watching her move. She didn't clean the way anyone he knew cleaned. First, she pulled out a small notebook from nowhere and began writing symbols that looked suspiciously like diagrams rather than words. Then she walked around the room attaching tiny paper labels to objects. "Chair," she read aloud while sticking a label on the chair. "That's not necessary," he said. "Classification precedes optimization," she replied. She opened the fridge and stared into it with the seriousness of an investigator at a crime scene. After several seconds of silence, she spoke to it. "You contain substances beyond recommended temporal thresholds," she said. "It's just old food," he muttered. She sighed, actually sighed, then began removing items one by one, examining each like it might reveal secrets about human civilization. At some point, she stopped in front of him, studying his face. "Question," she said. "Yeah? Why does a single human accumulate disorder when capable of restoration?" He shrugged. "People get tired. Busy. Alone." She wrote something down quickly. As the hours passed, the apartment began transforming. But it wasn't just clean, it was organized in ways he had never imagined. Tools were grouped by function, books arranged by emotional tone rather than genre, and cables aligned with geometric precision. It felt less like a home and more like a carefully designed system. Yet somehow, it felt warmer. He found himself talking more than usual. He told her about his work, his failed projects, his habit of staying up too late watching meaningless videos just to avoid silence. She listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding, occasionally writing notes. Humans speak when experiencing internal pressure, she concluded at one point. Sometimes, he said with a faint smile. She looked at him again, longer this time. Your vocal patterns change when you express isolation, she said. He laughed awkwardly. You analyze everything, don't you? Yes, she replied simply. When evening arrived, the apartment looked nothing like it had earlier. The chaos was gone. The silence was different now, lighter, less suffocating. He handed her some money, feeling strangely unsure whether it was enough or too much. She accepted it with formal care, like a signed treaty. As she prepared to leave, he scratched his head and said casually, You can, make yourself comfortable if you want. She paused. He didn't notice the way her eyes narrowed slightly, or how she repeated the phrase silently, like someone translating a complex command. He went to his bedroom and lay down, staring at the ceiling, feeling something unfamiliar. Not happiness exactly, but the absence of emptiness. The apartment no longer felt like a container for one person, it felt like a place where something had happened. Minutes passed. Then more. He was halfway asleep when he sensed movement. The door creaked softly. He turned his head. She stood there, perfectly calm, hands folded in front of her, expression serious. You instructed comfort, she said. His heart jumped. What? Based on human spatial data, the bed represents maximal comfort, she continued logically. Therefore, compliance requires relocation. He stared at her, completely awake now, trying to process whether this was real or the result of too much caffeine and loneliness. You didn't have to take that literally, he said carefully. She stepped closer, not aggressively, not shyly, but with the confidence of someone following instructions precisely. Clarification requested, she said softly. Does human comfort exclude shared proximity? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in a long while, he felt his mind short-circuit, not from fear, not from desire, but from the sheer absurdity and innocence of the situation. Somewhere between confusion and laughter, he realized something unsettling and strange. He had hired someone to clean his apartment. But somehow, without meaning to, he had invited something far more complicated into his life. He sat there for a few seconds after she spoke, trying to decide whether he should laugh, explain, or question his own sanity. The situation felt unreal, like one of those strange dreams where logic exists but refuses to follow familiar rules. She wasn't doing anything dramatic, wasn't smiling mischievously or acting embarrassed. She simply stood there, waiting for a response, as if he were a supervisor who needed to approve a technical adjustment. You don't have to relocate, he said slowly, choosing each word with caution. I meant, like, sit on the couch. Or watch TV. Or anything normal. She tilted her head again, absorbing his correction with visible seriousness. Recalibrating interpretation, she said, then stepped back one pace. He exhaled quietly, not realizing he had been holding his breath. She moved to the couch and sat down with perfect posture, hands resting on her knees. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The apartment, once chaotic and noisy with internal tension, felt strangely peaceful. The faint hum of machines, the distant city sounds outside, and the soft glow of lights created an atmosphere that felt almost intimate without either of them acknowledging it. Humans often employ imprecise language, she said after a while. He let out a small laugh. You could say that. She looked at him again, but this time her gaze was different. It wasn't analytical like before. It was slower, more curious, as if she were no longer studying an object but trying to understand a person. Why did you hire me? She asked. He hesitated. I already told you. My apartment was a disaster. She waited. He could tell she wasn't satisfied. That was not the primary reason, she said calmly. He frowned. You always this direct? Yes, she replied without hesitation. He looked away toward the ceiling. Fine. Maybe I just didn't want to be alone tonight. She processed this statement in silence. He could almost feel her mind working, rearranging concepts she had never encountered before. Loneliness is a human malfunction? She asked. Not exactly, he said. It's more like a side effect of being human. She nodded slowly, as if filing the answer into some internal archive. They sat there for a while, sharing snacks he awkwardly offered her. She examined each item carefully before tasting it, as if food were a scientific experiment rather than a pleasure. When she finally tried something sweet, her expression changed in a way he hadn't seen before, eyes widening slightly, lips parting just enough to reveal genuine surprise. This substance produces emotional elevation, she said. Yeah, he smiled. That's called dessert. She wrote something in her notebook again. At some point, he realized he was talking more than he had talked to anyone in months. He told her about his job, about how he designed machines that people barely noticed, about how he often felt like his work existed in the background of other people's lives. He joked about his failed attempts at dating, about conversations that never went anywhere, about messages left on read. She listened without judgment. Humans create machines to solve problems, she said when he finished. But humans cannot engineer solutions for emotional absence. That's deep, he said with a half smile. She blinked. I do not intend depth. I intend accuracy. The night grew quieter. Outside, traffic sounds faded. Inside, the apartment felt less like a workspace and more like a shared environment. He noticed that she had rearranged the furniture slightly, not for efficiency but for symmetry. The couch was angled toward the window. The lamp was placed where light touched both of them equally. You changed the layout, he said. Yes, she replied. Humans position objects based on emotional comfort rather than optimal function. You figured that out already? I observed you, she said simply. He felt a strange warmth in his chest at that answer, though he didn't fully understand why. Eventually, he stood up and stretched. I should sleep. Big day tomorrow. She looked at him as if she were recalculating the meaning of sleep. Sleep is a state of vulnerability, she said. Yeah, pretty much. She stared at the hallway leading to his bedroom, then back at him. For a brief moment, he feared she might repeat her earlier logic, but instead she stayed seated, hands folded neatly. I will remain in this location, she said. Good, he nodded. That's good. He walked to his room, but something about the night felt different. He didn't feel the usual weight of emptiness pressing against him. He felt watched, not in a threatening way, but in a strangely comforting one, like someone was quietly guarding the silence. He lay down on his bed and stared at the ceiling again. His mind replayed her words, her expressions, the way she treated ordinary things as mysteries. He wondered what it would be like to see the world the way she did, without assumptions, without emotional baggage, without the invisible rules humans never questioned. Minutes passed. Then more. He was just drifting towards sleep when he heard soft footsteps again. This time, he didn't panic immediately. He turned his head slowly. She stood at the doorway again, but her expression was different now. Less confident. Less logical. Almost hesitant. I have encountered a conceptual inconsistency, she said quietly. He sat up slightly. What kind? You corrected my interpretation of comfort, she said. However, data suggests humans associate comfort with proximity to trusted individuals. He stared at her, unsure how to respond. Do you consider me a trusted individual? She asked. The question caught him off guard. It wasn't funny anymore. It wasn't absurd. It was honest. He thought for a moment. I barely know you, he said. She nodded once, accepting the factual accuracy. Yet you allowed me into your private environment, she continued. You shared personal information. You altered your routine. He had no answer. I am attempting to understand whether I am categorized as a temporary service provider or something else, she said softly. The silence between them felt heavier now, but not uncomfortable. He finally sighed and ran a hand through his hair. You're not just someone I hired to clean, he admitted. If that's what you're asking. Her eyes focused on him intensely. Define classification, she said. He searched for words that didn't sound ridiculous. I guess, you're someone I don't mind having around. For a moment, she didn't move. Then something subtle shifted in her expression. Not a smile, not excitement, something quieter, more fragile. Understood, she said. She stepped back slightly, as if adjusting her position not physically but emotionally. I will remain on the couch, she added. He nodded. She turned away and walked back to the living room, her footsteps softer than before. He lay back down, his heart beating a little faster than usual, his mind filled with questions he had never thought to ask before. In the living room, she sat quietly, staring at the wall where she had labeled objects earlier. Slowly, she peeled off one of the labels, the one she had placed on the couch. She held it in her fingers, studying it as if it no longer represented something simple. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she wasn't analyzing dust, furniture, or language. She was analyzing something far more confusing. Humans. Morning arrived quietly, without the usual harsh intrusion of alarms or traffic. Light slipped through the curtains in thin lines, touching the rearranged furniture and the perfectly aligned objects that no longer felt foreign to the apartment. He woke with the strange sensation that something in his life had shifted overnight, though nothing visible seemed dramatically different. For a moment, he forgot she was there. Then he heard movement. Not clumsy footsteps, not rushed motion, precise, deliberate sounds, like someone following invisible instructions. He stepped out of his room and found her standing near the window, staring at the sky with an intensity that didn't match the peaceful morning. You don't sleep much, do you? He asked. Sleep is inefficient during periods of heightened probability, she replied. He frowned. Heightened probability of what? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the small notebook she had been using. The pages were filled with symbols, diagrams, and strange lines that looked less like writing and more like maps. Observation, she said. Earth's atmosphere exhibits irregular signal patterns today. He walked closer and looked outside. The sky looked normal, blue, quiet, ordinary. You're overthinking again, he said lightly. She slowly turned her head toward him. I do not overthink, she said. I calculate. Before he could respond, a faint hum vibrated through the air. At first, he thought it was one of his machines, but the sound was deeper, heavier, and coming from outside. She stiffened. That was the first time he had ever seen her body react before her mind. What is it? He asked. Her eyes darkened slightly, not with fear but with recognition. They have located the sector, she said. His stomach tightened. Who? She closed her notebook and looked at him fully. I must revise earlier statements, she said calmly. I am not simply between galaxies. He waited. My species is classified as restricted by interstellar governance, she continued. We are prohibited from entering human territories without authorization. He stared at her. You're saying you're illegal? Yes, she replied without hesitation. Before he could process that, the hum outside grew louder. The glass in the window trembled faintly. He walked closer and looked down at the street. There was nothing obvious at first. No crowds, no explosions, no dramatic events. Just people walking, cars passing, life continuing. Then he saw it. A flicker in the air above the buildings, like heat distortion, but sharper. A shape that wasn't quite visible, as if reality itself had been edited poorly. She stepped beside him. They are scanning, she said. Scanning for what? For me. He felt his chest tighten. Why would anyone ban your species? He asked. She hesitated for the first time since he had met her. Because, she said slowly, we disrupt emotional ecosystems. He blinked. That's not exactly a crime. In interstellar terms, it is, she replied. Humans are considered volatile yet valuable. My species is considered destabilizing. The hum outside intensified. The invisible distortion shifted position, hovering closer to the building. Her posture changed. Until now, she had seemed curious, analytical, sometimes awkward. Now she looked different, alert, controlled, focused in a way that felt older than the city around them. They will attempt extraction, she said. Extraction? He repeated. Yes. He swallowed. What happens if they find you? She looked at him directly. I will be removed from Earth permanently, she said. Memory traces involving me will be erased from associated humans. His mind stalled. Erased? He whispered. Yes, she said simply. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The apartment felt smaller than before, as if the walls were closing in slowly. They won't find you, he said suddenly, though he had no idea how he could possibly guarantee that. She studied him carefully. Humans typically prioritize self-preservation, she said. Your statement contradicts expected behavior. He felt irritation rise, mixed with something stronger. Maybe humans aren't as predictable as you think, he said. The hum grew louder. This time, it was close enough that he could feel it in his bones. She walked toward the center of the room and began moving objects with precise speed, adjusting lights, repositioning metal devices, unplugging certain machines. What are you doing? He asked. Reducing detection probability, she said. He watched her hands move, realizing that her earlier cleaning had not just been organization, it had been preparation. Every cable aligned, every surface cleared, every device positioned with purpose. Did you plan this? He asked. No, she said. But I anticipated risk. The distortion outside suddenly shifted downward, stopping directly in front of the building. He felt a surge of panic. They're here, he said. Yes, she replied calmly. He looked at her, expecting fear. There was none. Instead, she looked almost disappointed. They are inefficient, she said. He stared at her. You're judging alien authorities right now. They rely on predictable human patterns, she said. You are unpredictable. Before he could respond, a sharp tone pierced the air, like a signal cutting through silence. She stepped closer to him. They will attempt to access the building, she said. You must decide. Decide what? Whether you wish to remain uninvolved, she said. He felt his heart race. If I do nothing, he said slowly, what happens to me? Nothing, she replied. You will forget me. He imagined waking up tomorrow, his apartment clean, his life unchanged, his loneliness intact, with no memory of the strange alien woman who labeled his furniture and questioned his emotions. For a brief moment, the idea felt safe. Then he remembered her voice, her questions, the way she looked at the world like it was something worth studying. I don't like that option, he said quietly. She looked at him sharply. Interference will place you at risk, she said. He shrugged, though his hands were shaking. I've been at risk of boredom for years, he said. This feels better. For a fraction of a second, her expression changed again. Not analytical. Not logical. Almost human. The sound outside intensified suddenly, and a faint ripple moved through the walls, like something brushing against reality. She grabbed his wrist. Her touch was warm. They are attempting entry, she said. Your building systems are vulnerable. He looked at his machines, the devices he had built, the prototypes he had never thought were important. Suddenly, they didn't look useless anymore. Give me a minute, he said. She watched him closely as he moved fast, typing commands, rerouting power, connecting devices that had never been connected before. His fingers flew across keyboards, his mind racing not with fear but with focus. The hum outside faltered. The distortion flickered. She stared at him. You are altering detection frequencies, she said. He didn't look up. I told you, he said. Humans build machines to solve problems. The invisible shape outside shifted erratically, as if confused. For the first time, she looked genuinely surprised. You are not behaving according to probability models, she said softly. He finally turned to her. Yeah, he said. Get used to it. The hum outside began to fade. But he knew something instinctively. This was not over. And she knew it too. She released his wrist slowly, but neither of them moved away. For the first time since she had entered his life, the situation was no longer funny, no longer accidental. It was real. And whatever she was, whatever her species represented, one thing was clear to him now. She was not just someone he had hired to clean his apartment. She was someone he had chosen not to lose. The apartment felt unnaturally quiet after the hum vanished, like the world had taken a breath and decided not to release it yet. The machines he had improvised slowly powered down, lights returning to their normal rhythm, cables relaxing into stillness. Outside, the city continued as if nothing unusual had happened, people walking past unaware that something invisible had hovered above their lives just moments ago. He stood there for a while, hands still hovering over the keyboard, unsure whether to feel proud, terrified, or foolish. She watched him without speaking. Finally, he leaned back against the table and let out a slow breath. So, I guess that worked. Yes, she said. Temporarily. He looked at her. You're not very good at celebrating victories, are you? Celebration implies permanence, she replied. This situation is unstable. He frowned. You really know how to ruin the mood. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked toward the couch and sat down slowly, her movements less precise than usual, as if something inside her was slightly out of alignment. He noticed. You okay? He asked. I am experiencing cognitive conflict, she said. That sounds serious. It is, she replied quietly. He sat beside her, leaving a small space between them, unsure whether closing the distance would feel intrusive or comforting. She stared ahead at the wall where the labels still clung to objects like quiet witnesses of her strange logic. Your actions today contradicted multiple human behavioral predictions, she said. He smiled faintly. I'll take that as a compliment. In my species, she said, unpredictability is associated with danger. And in humans? He asked. She turned her head slightly toward him. In humans, she said, unpredictability is associated with individuality. He felt something warm rise in his chest at her words. Silence settled between them again, but it was different from the silence he used to hate. It wasn't empty. It was shared. Why did you really stay? He asked suddenly. She looked at him. You could have run, he continued. When you realized they were scanning, you could have left. You could have hidden somewhere else. Yes, she said. So why didn't you? She thought for a moment. I calculated probability of survival alone versus probability of survival with you, she said. And? He asked. With you, she said. The probability was higher. He laughed softly. That's it. She shook her head slowly. That is not the only variable, she said. He waited. She looked down at her hands, as if examining something invisible on her skin. When I first encountered you, she said, you displayed signs of loneliness, disorganization, and emotional fatigue. He raised an eyebrow. Thanks. You did not reject me, she continued. You did not attempt exploitation. You offered a transactional agreement with fair compensation. He shrugged. Basic decency. In many civilizations, she said, decency is not basic. Her voice was quieter now. You also shared personal data voluntarily, she added. You listened to my questions without hostility. You modified your environment to accommodate my presence. He felt a strange tightness in his throat. These behaviors suggested that remaining near you would not result in immediate harm, she said. He smiled faintly. Glad I passed your alien background check. She didn't smile back, but her eyes softened. There is another factor, she said. He waited. I found your presence statistically calming, she said. The words were awkward, almost mechanical, but the meaning behind them felt anything but. He looked at her for a long moment, unsure what to say. You know, he said finally, humans usually say things like that in a much less complicated way. She turned toward him. How would a human say it? He hesitated. Something like, I feel safe with you, he said. She repeated the sentence quietly, testing it like a foreign language. I feel safe with you, she said again. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, a distant siren echoed through the city. Inside, the apartment felt warmer than it had ever felt before. After a while, she reached into her notebook and began writing again. What are you doing now? He asked. I am drafting a revised agreement, she said. He leaned closer, curious. The page was filled with symbols at first, but then he noticed words written in imperfect English. Coexistence Protocol, he read aloud. She nodded. This agreement redefines our interaction, she said. You are no longer classified as an employer. I am no longer classified as a service provider. He smiled. And what are we now? She paused. Undefined, she said. He laughed softly. That sounds about right. She slid the notebook toward him. Approval required, she said. He picked up a pen and signed the bottom of the page, even though he didn't fully understand what he was agreeing to. There, he said. Official. She watched the signature carefully, as if it carried more meaning than ink. Night slowly returned to the city. Lights outside turned on one by one, stars barely visible through the haze of urban glow. He stood up and walked to the kitchen, then came back with 2 cups of tea. He handed one to her. She examined it briefly, then accepted it. They sat there together, not talking much, just existing in the same space. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the urge to fill the silence with noise. After a while, she spoke again. They will return, she said. He nodded. I figured. Your interference has been recorded, she continued. You may be classified as an anomaly. He smirked. I've been called worse. She looked at him seriously. You may face consequences, she said. He met her gaze. Then I guess we'll deal with them, he said. She studied his face carefully, as if memorizing it. Humans are irrational, she said. Yeah, he replied. That's kind of our thing. She stared at him for a moment longer, then slowly leaned back against the couch. This environment is acceptable, she said. He glanced at her. High praise. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. Clarification, she said. About what? Your earlier instruction, she said softly. He raised an eyebrow. Which one? Make yourself comfortable, she said. He felt a flicker of embarrassment. This time, she said, I understand the correct interpretation. He waited. She didn't move toward the bedroom. Instead, she shifted slightly closer to him on the couch, not touching him, but near enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. Comfort, she said quietly, does not require beds. He smiled. Outside, the night deepened. Somewhere beyond the sky, invisible forces were undoubtedly recalculating, reanalyzing, preparing for another attempt. Inside the apartment, none of that mattered for the moment. Because in a small, strangely organized room in the middle of an ordinary city, a lonely human engineer and a misunderstood alien woman sat side by side, bound not by contracts, not by logic, but by something neither of them fully understood yet. And for the first time, either of them felt alone.